Hi, my name is Amy. Thank you very much for watching, and let's make some bad financial decisions together. This is for entertainment purposes only, so if you're entertained, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about YieldMax's big announcement, which they've been hinting at, and I respect them because they were not able to announce this until they were able to announce it, and they didn't cave to our demands right away. They did strategize and make sure they're going to give us the same kind of products, the same returns that we've been expecting, and just make sure that we're all satisfied with the product in the end. Anyway, everything that's been declaring weekly and everything that is a basket of stocks that is not the Target 12 ETFs is now going to declare on Tuesdays. So that's Chippy, FEET, 5E, GPTY, LFGY, UDTY, RDTY, SDTY, SLTY, ULTI, YMAG, and YMAX. Those are all declaring on Tuesdays. And every Wednesday, we have all of the single stock ETFs. So ABNY, AIYY, AMDY, AMZ, APLY, BABO, BRKC, Coney, CRCO, Crash, Carvana, Dips, Disso, Dre, Phoebe, Fiat, GDXY, GMEY, GUI, HIYY, HOOY, JPMO, Maro, Marnie, MSFO, MSTU, Misty, Netflix, NVIDIA, OARC, PLTY, PyPy, RBLY, RDTY, SMCY, Snowy, Tesla, TSMY, Winter, Zomo, XYZY, Ybit, and YQQ. So those are all going to now declare on Wednesdays. And so even in the post that I had, some people had questions about this. So I'd like to go over this. So was this a lot of work for YieldMight to get this taken care of? Actually, it's kind of already set up to handle this, so I was able to change the frequency in YieldMight. What does this mean for YieldMight though? It does mean that when you go into the details section for these, it'll be miscalculating the return on investment for a while. So take like the 3, 6, 9 months, everything with a grain of salt, because it changed the frequency, which uses a different way of calculating it. So for a while, FEET and 5E on YieldMight might look weird, and like it is paying you more than it is. And I would apologize for that, but it's YieldMax's fault for changing the pay cadence. So YieldMax wanted to warn us all that for the next 4 weeks, these distributions are all going to be pretty lumpy, which means some of these have, 3 weeks worth of distributions or 3 weeks of cover calls that you need to pay out. Some of them have 2 weeks, some of them have 1 week. So as they are getting into the weekly cadence, then we'll get more of an idea of what a typical distribution is going to be like from these funds. So the next question that I think a lot of people had is, how does this affect the distributions? And they're saying that it's not really going to, they're not changing their strategy at all, but some weeks you are going to have less of a distribution, and some it hit momentum and has more implied volatility, so they're able to capture more, so you'll get more. So it won't be as predictable what each pay is, but in some respects it is actually going to be easier to predict what our pay is going to be because it is a shorter time period. So another question that happened, because I went to the Twitter space that YieldMax has at noon on Wednesdays, and they wanted to point out that when they roll over the synthetics, that goes from an unrealized gain or loss to a realized gain or loss. And so rolling the synthetic won't really affect how much you're getting getting distributed to you because they only distribute the premium that they get from cover calls. The synthetic rollover really affects how the distributions that you received, how they're classified for tax purposes. So if implied volatility went up, you got paid more, but the price of the underlying went down, we rolled the synthetic, there was a loss, that's going to be a return of capital because they're not paying you the profit or the loss from the synthetic. They're using that money from the synthetic to get into more synthetics further into the future so they can continue doing cover calls. So they're not paying us either the profit or the loss directly. It's just affecting how return of capital is working for us. And they're not synchronized. So you could be getting a lot of distributions because we had high premiums, but then also it's return of capital because the price went down because of the timing of the synthetic. So listening to that today, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That actually makes more sense than my previous understanding of how the synthetic and everything works. And even when you listen to Retire on Dividends, when he's trying to tie in the synthetic, nobody knows how it affects the distribution amount, and it makes more sense that it doesn't. It's just the return of capital. So I also wanted to point out that for the EU, the MISTI and the YMAG and the YieldMax, or whatever they have, those are not going to weekly because the European Union has too many markets and they're not set up to allow for a weekly distribution, but they are working on doing that. So they also said that Ulti gets the most attention, and they just wanted to clarify that it's not that way at Tidal. The YieldMax team is actually very large. Each trader that's responsible for their ticker pays that much attention to it. It's their important ticker. I think for their audience, though, for like us as the influencers that are doing this, I believe we do spend more time on Ulti because, well, they can have any holding that they want at any time, and it's high implied volatility. A lot of people get, the moss of the flame, and everybody is still wondering, is this going to even work? Like, how is it going to work into the future? I think people get more anxious about, at least I'm more anxious about Ulti because it's not a safe investment. Like, it's an interesting play. I'm in Ulti still, but I think that people like it because it has more implied volatility, and we're all just curious to see how it goes. So it does get more, it gets talked about more than the other YieldMax ETFs, because once you understand and you like the underlying or the theme or whatever we're doing, and they're just doing a pretty standard now synthetic and cover call strategy. So it's just that Ulti is such an outlier in what the rest of the industry is doing. So anyways, I really wanted to touch on, because there was a big discussion today about reverse splitting stocks. Like Murni it's like $1.82. It probably does need to get a reverse split. Ulti is around $5 right now. It probably at some point in the future needs to do a reverse split. And my YieldMax in that Twitter space insisted that, well, our community had a really bad reaction to it. Our community doesn't want reverse splits. And I was thinking the whole time, okay, I think back when Tesla did that with Tesla, YieldMax was so new that none of us knew, is YieldMax as a company going to be around? Is this going to catch on? Is this going to be popular? What is their does the strategy even work? And I think it was mostly just like one really loud individual that was pushing the no reverse split. But in the Twitter discussion, they said, well, if you actually do that reverse split, two good things would happen. First of all, when a stock goes below a certain price, some brokers increase the margin maintenance. So if you do have a large amount of ulti and it goes below $5, then all of a sudden you might go from 25% margin maintenance to 100% margin maintenance. And when they do that overnight, it can mess up a lot of people. Second of all, options. Ulti has options now. So we can go and look here, and we can go to Ulti, and or not. We can trade options. So Ulti has enough market cap now that they actually are weekly. But because it's only $5, like you can't really, like there's nothing, you can't really place a cover call on it because you still have to go very far out to get even any money. And even then, like this is in the money and you're only getting $5. If they could, I wouldn't reverse split it to $50 because I wouldn't place options on a $50 ulti, but like a $20 ulti or $25 ulti, I think when you increase the price, it increases the moneyness of the options. So all of a sudden we could also sell puts on ulti, because for me, getting $25 to have a $550 collateral, and this has implied volatility of 55%, like that would be worth it if we could get something like that every week where I don't want ulti to ever be expensive, but I would like for it to be expensive enough that it would be worth it for me to do options on it. I've said things about this before, but generally with things that do a distribution, you're more like, it would be better to be in ulti and sell cover calls on ulti because this has an 87% distribution rate. So you may as well collect all those distributions. But if you're planning on buying 100 shares of ulti anyways, you can sell puts until you get into the position. So, and if I didn't, like, I have way too much margin out, so I can do ulti with margin collateral because it does tend to stay within its band until it just really doesn't. So I can do some option collateral which like freezes that amount of money until I either get assigned or it expires worthless. So I'm just saying that there's two reasons at least why YieldMax could consider to do reverse splits now that I believe that the very vocal minority that didn't like reverse splits, like they're not even investing in YieldMax anymore. And there's really no difference. Literally, they take like your 10 shares and they do a 2-for-1 split, and your 2 shares become 1 share. It's still like that money amount of ulti of capital that you have, and so the amount of distribution per share, like the dollar amount would increase, but it would still be like the 87%. So percentage wise, it really should not make any difference because it's the same. It's just that you would have less shares outstanding for ulti, and so you would just divide the amount that they want to distribute by that amount of shares. So it has no effect, really. It just, maybe when a year or two ago, actually, remember last year this time when ulti changed its entire the prospectus, and they changed it so their owning all of the underlying, and now they're doing protective puts, and like now they can do every single thing under the sun to make this every fancy option known to man to make ulti profitable. Okay, well they changed it and now it's been consistent and it hasn't gone down to $2 yet. So I think that now that they fixed the actual strategy for ulti, I am more in favor of them doing the reverse split so that we can now have options. Because I would, with 2,000 shares of ulti, if it comes down to like 500 shares of ulti, okay, well I can do 3 cover calls on it every week and get more money from ulti to invest either more into ulti or pay off my 0% credit cards. So I'm just putting that out there that I would love to be able to do more options on ulti. The only YieldMax fund that I'm aware of that has a decent options trade is Misty. And I've been burned enough with the cover calls on Misty to like never want to do that ever again. But ulti is really one of those ones where it has a high implied volatility. It has a lot of assets under management. So once we do get that reverse split, or if we even do get a reverse split and we have decent options in there, I would be inclined to do that more often, at least to consider doing it. If they reverse split ulti 10-1 and it's now a $50 stock, we might have to wait for it to come down to $20 before we start doing any options on it, because I'm not putting up $5,000 of collateral in ulti. So just put that out there. So anyways, I think that we have, well, this is YieldMight. We have changed the weekly, like all of the single stocks are declaring on Wednesday. All of the ones that are basket of stocks are now on Tuesday. Maybe YieldMax just didn't like the fact that they were below the fold on YieldMight. They really just wanted to be at the very top. So they decided they're going to go ahead and do that for us. So I'm predicting that Feet and 5e in the future are not front runners. It's just that they had their every 4-week distribution and they're going to weekly next week. So it's saying like it's going to get $4.29 every week. That is not true. So hopefully this will normalize out and look better. Just take YieldMight with a grain of salt until everything smooths out. So, but I'm glad that we were able to get everything there, and now every 4 weeks is pretty much curve. And we still have our monthly distributions. QLDY, I believe, is updated. So we've had 3 distributions so far, and it's like a 20% distribution rate, I believe. So it's doing pretty well. And another thing to point out, you all, is that if we filter on MSTR, now we can get paid on Monday, or it declares on Wednesday. It declares on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we can get paid for MSTR technically 5 days a week now, except I think that Robinhood does not pay me distributions on Monday night for whatever reason. So it's Tuesday through Friday. So the changes here is I'm no longer going to be doing the Misty prediction video because it's going to be every single week. I might on Wednesdays do a YieldMax declaration video instead and go through which ones did the best and whatever. But I might also start doing my shopping on Fridays instead of on Mondays, because I will be getting my ulti payment on Thursday. Well, because it declares on Tuesday, it pays on Thursdays, but Robinhood pays at that night, so it would be Thursday night. So it just, we'll figure out when I'm doing my shopping sprees. I do like doing them on Monday. It starts out the week with a pretty easy video to do. But anyways, we now have even more weekly options. I do overall like weekly pings because I am relying on this full time. And so I have my tracking and I enjoy it when I get the money every week and I can track it and make sure that I'm on track to get enough money for the month. That way I can do things like doing more options if I need to. It gives me time to do whatever I need to do in order to get enough money so that I'm not, for example, in November trying to figure out how to pay for my mortgage. So, it does help me as someone that is relying on this income for income, which is what these are for. These are for income investors that are using this to pay for things for now. Anyways, what I'm saying is I'm generally supportive of YieldMax doing this. I have made the changes to YieldMight. It's going to look weird for a while, but it is what it is. So what are your thoughts on reverse splits? Do you want YieldMax to do that for Moderna and for Ulti? That way we can have decent options and also just more wiggle room for when it does go down in price. And actually, before we go, I would really love to thank Scott Behringer, Michael Holiday, Motivation Boost, Shane O'Mac, Bill Bryant, Pedrick Spalding, BGP Automotive, in my opinion, Jetta, and Omega Werewolf X. You are all amazing, and you're helping me make my YouTube channel and YieldMight more sustainable, and truly, you are all the best, and thank you for making your bad financial decisions with me. And today on Financial Philharmonics, I just made the song. This is the quickest I've ever made a song and put it out in production. But we have big moves at YieldMax, and we need to go in and change that thumbnail back to what it's supposed to be. But it's a dance EDM song celebrating the fact that we get weekly pays for literally everything now. So, I believe I asked about reverse splits. Are you opposed to them? And I will talk to you later. Bye.